I'm Matt.
I'm Shane.
And if you like what you hear, make sure you hit that thumbs up button real hard and make sure you subscribe to Comic Movie Marks.
And also click that little bell for all of the notifications.
Whee!
Always remember,
If Trailer Trash can do it,
anyone can do it.
hello and welcome everyone to another Comic Movie Marks video.
Does the House of Mouse have a stranglehold on cinema?
This episode has been in the woodworks for probably 2 months now. It's amazing how things just keep growing and growing. First, it was about how ridiculous the box office was for the House of Mouse, and then it started warping into some other narrative for us, and then it kind of culminates with this article by Senior Mark Hughes of Forbes magazine, and his tweet saying, "Is Disney really threatening to become a monopoly? And is their box office dominance bad for cinema?" The answers are no and no, so find out why in my latest Forbes today. Do you honestly believe Disney isn't bad for cinema?
Yes.
So we meet again, Mr. Hughes. All right, that's my best Bond impersonation type thing, like evil villain. The funny thing about Mark Hughes is we had something nice to say about him somewhat recently. Well, now the tables have turned. We have pulled a full 180 on him.
Well. How the turntables...
So from the Forbes article, Mark Hughes says, with a slate of blockbusters unlike any in Hollywood history, Disney's family of studios are crushing the global box office with unprecedented sales. So this was as of the writing August 7th. The House of Mouse topped 7.8 plus billion in worldwide receipts, and the studio is on track for a record-shattering $11 billion gross in 2019. That's a mind-blowing 45% increase over the previous all-time annual record set by, you guessed it, Disney back in 2017. Over the remaining 5 months, Disney has had these films on the calendar: The Art of Racing in the Rain, Ready or Not, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, Ford vs. Ferrari, Frozen 2, Star Wars: The Rise of the Skywalker, and Spies in Disguise. Just two of those upcoming releases, Frozen 2 and Star Wars, will easily combine for at least $2 billion in additional revenue by the end of the year, while the current release is still performing well in the marketplace, led by The Lion King, Aladdin, and Toy Story 4, will continue boosting Disney's cume to the tune of another $270 plus or minus million.
So even without the remaining Fox releases, Disney is already guaranteed to top 10 plus billion by year's end. The Fox films then only need to contribute about $500 million combined to send Disney over that $11 billion mark, which is a stunning outcome and a testament to the power of not only Disney's library of IP and popular brands, but also the studio's marketing machine and the overall leadership across their family studios. Yes, the leadership of buy everything. This heavy loading of 2019 with such a massive slate of blockbusters means next year will inevitably see a downturn in the theatrical revenue for Disney, but that doesn't matter. This year's slate is intended to ensure a flood of major releases onto Disney Plus as soon as possible to build up a new streaming service library quickly. And this is kind of an amazing statement here. He says, even if Disney reaches 11 billion, as I predicted they will, it will still only amount to perhaps 1/4 of 2019's box office.
So as I was saying, the amount of money I'm going to be making would hurt your parents' feelings. You remember the class where I taught you all how to make it rain? That's what I'm going to be doing every single night. Dollar bills, y'all.
One studio has 1/4 of the worldwide box office.
But then he does add in here, other studios are meanwhile enjoying their own record-setting box office results despite the false negative narratives you hear constantly regarding Disney's dominance. Warner Brothers, for example, had their biggest year in history last year, very important, grossing more than $5.6 billion compared to Disney's $7.3 billion for the same period.
And then he jumps down and he talks about the streaming services. He says, even in streaming terms, Disney Plus will, of course, be a success, but talk of Disney having a monopoly or being on the verge of rendering other streaming service obsolete is equally grossly exaggerated to laughable degrees. HBO and Netflix have hundreds of millions of subscribers, And both have faced nonstop sky is falling predictions year after year from the same voices now trying to convince you Disney Plus will set a fire to all opponents and take over the streaming landscape in short order.
No, not even the bundling of Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus at $12.99 per month will cause much damage to Netflix or the upcoming HBO Max. Consider this simple fact. Average households will be able to have Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus, HBO Max, and CBS All Access for $50 a month. That's cheaper than the lowest price basic cable plan. Viewers will be able to add NBC's Universal streaming service for $12.99 per month, boosting the monthly grand total to $63 per month, which is cheaper than comparable Spectrum or Comcast cable options. Now add all these various free movie and TV show streaming apps to your TV and mobile devices.
Something I find crazy about this one overall is I feel like Mark Hughes is leaving out a lot of information. Yes, Disney is dominating the box office. Yes, they loaded up 2019 very heavy-handedly with movies that would do gangbusters. If you look at least almost the top 6, that's all Disney movies. Avengers Endgame, The Lion King, Captain Marvel, Toy Story 4, and Aladdin. 5 out of the 6 top-grossing movies are Disney movies this year. If you count Spider-Man Far From Home, which actually Sony gets the box office on, that is technically another Disney property that gained over $1 billion as well. Look at Disney as a business in total. What we have here is a company that has done a lot of things outside of just the box office dominance that we're experiencing this year. As we know, they actually were able to close the deal with Fox on March 20th of this year. So what are we looking at? We're looking at people being laid off. We're seeing movies that Fox originally had being changed. As of now, this is just a rumor, but New Mutants is now no longer going to be really tied to anything X-Men. It's just going to be a bunch of teenagers with powers. And then you have things from like Cosmic Book News here saying Disney Fox sabotages Dark Phoenix for Captain Marvel and Brie Larson. Basically, as some might know, release the Kinberg cut. There was a Simon Kinberg cut of the movie, but it got heavily altered, and the scrolls were supposed to be in Dark Phoenix. I'm not saying this necessarily would have made the movie any better at all, but you can see that there was definitely some major alterations to the film by the overlords at the House of Mouse.
And unfortunately, Kinberg subscribed to the same mentality as David Ayer and just decided to say, no, this is my cut. Even though there were some fan screenings showing otherwise, this seemed to actually be a little more fulfilling.
Originally, it was supposed to be a 2-parter. All of a sudden, a 2-part series got condensed down to 1. And yes, we are talking about Dark Phoenix, not Justice League. It might sound very familiar.
Sounds eerily familiar. An article from Vice states your local theater might never screen classics like Die Hard again thanks to Disney. Disney is refusing to let some independent theaters show movies from 20th Century Fox's catalog, from Alien to The Sound of Music. In an article from the LA Times, says cinemas worry Disney may leave Fight Club and other Fox classics out of theaters. Derek Reese, general manager of the historic Little Theater in Rochester, New York, was expecting a decent Monday night crowd for his cinema's screening of the David Fincher's satire Fight Club, a movie produced by 20th Century Fox. Days before the screening, Rice contacted a studio representative to confirm that the digital version of the movie was on its way, but the response he got surprised him. The studio would no longer license its old films for commercial theaters. The screening was canceled, with Rice hanging a sign in front of the theater, which opened in 1929 to notify patrons.
My God, I haven't been fucked like that since grade school.
He's quoted saying, "We're not Regal, we're not AMC," Ray said by phone earlier this week. "We're just one theater out in Rochester trying to play Fight Club." What changed, however, was clear. Fox and the movies in its storied library of motion pictures is now part of Walt Disney Co., which has long placed tight restrictions on when and how cinemas can screen its older titles.
A programming director for Review Cinema, Eric Valetti, says, "Okay, folks, listen up. As long feared, we can no longer license 20th Century Fox repertory product. The Review Cinema has long relied on that library, but we'll have to adapt. Plenty of other studios still happy to license content."
And then in a subtweet to this tweet, Josh Lewis is a film programmer and a theater operator. He says, "Wasn't sure if I was allowed to say anything about this yet, but it's true. All of our Fox contacts were fired, and we've been all but straight up told as an indie theater that we can no longer book Fox titles. But congrats on that Fantastic Four movie." As long as this deal has been apparently going down, we've been saying that there's way more to it than just getting the X-Men and the Fantastic Four back in the MCU. People have such tunnel vision, they can't see what happens when a large studio like Disney buys another large studio like Fox. What the consequences of that is. Employees being laid off. How it affects smaller theaters like the ones we just described. How it affects the other movies that were already in production for Fox.
Exactly. A lot of it being manipulated with no real underlying care for some of these smaller theaters. They've even mentioned it. We're not Regal. We're not AMC. We're a smaller type theater. And that's what they use to survive.
But as in some cases, size doesn't always matter.
It's too big. Size matters not.
Going back all the way to November of 2017, before The Last Jedi came out, there was an article done by Wall Street Journal saying Disney lays down the law for theaters on Star Wars The Last Jedi. At least that's true for Star Wars The Last Jedi, which claimed Disney was demanding movie theaters in North America pay 65% of the film's box office for every week it plays. Oh, and the movie needs to play for at least 4 weeks in each cinema's largest auditorium. Otherwise, the studio is charging a 5% penalty, bringing their cut to 70%.
No wonder why their box office numbers are so high. Not only are they going to dictate the percentage that they're going to get of the box office, they're going to charge a penalty if you decide to move it from your largest auditorium anytime before the 4-week period. If you're a smaller theater, you can also not replay some of their classics from the Fox library. I'm assuming they probably have had this same thing for Disney for a long time, but now that it applies to the Fox library is where a lot of these smaller theaters are going to start to struggle.
Let's not forget either that when Disneyland was being criticized by the LA Times, they banned them from early screenings. Now, eventually that got overturned, and that was in 2017. Now we're in 2019, where they are the biggest studio in Hollywood. They control a very large portion of what is seen in theaters now. Now they have control. So what does that really mean? They can now flex their power on anybody. They change whatever they want. They affect these small theaters. They're laying off Fox employees. So where does it end? And that's what we were trying to talk about with Mark Hughes. There's so much more than just the box office here that you got to look at. Maybe it's not a monopoly by the dictionary definition. It's not a monopoly, but there is an idea that, like, who wants to piss off Disney now? Are they not going to just get favorable articles, Mr. Hughes, to make sure you stay in the good graces of the studio? We already know that was happening before with Disney. People don't want to rock the boat.
Adam, you're saying no fan reviews across the board. Rotten Tomatoes is saying no fan reviews before the movie
comes out. Yeah.
Okay.
And then after that, it's a free for all. So are you ready to watch me try to thread this needle?
Sure.
Because I have a take on this that I haven't heard. So
we need a drum roll.
No, no. All right. So here's the thing. What I hear time and again, and the reason why I don't really engage, but I do listen to people. They talk about, the problems of access media, and they talk about it in a way that's very conspiratorial, which I think is not terribly realistic. That everybody's a shill, everybody's getting that Disney cash. But here's the actual reality.
I was going to say, like, have you been on mentions lately?
Here's where we actually are in the industry. If you want to talk about quote access media. Every single person that wants to have access to things early, that wants to get access to things so that traffic is drawn to their site, will on occasion. Everybody at this podcast, everybody in our industry occasionally has to play softball, occasionally has to, look the other way a little bit. Everybody has to do it.
Wait, we're turning what? Like a movie that's bad,
in the sense that, I hated a movie, but I won't say that I hated the movie. Or an actor behaved a sort of way, and you don't want to, put it out there that happened.
Right, because you might not get the next review,
right.
Next
So
gig.
to some degree, everybody in our industry that is a part of this quote-unquote access media has to sort of decide which battles they want to pick.
$11 billion in 2019. That's more than most countries' GDP. But yet we're just going to kind of like, oh, well, they're just fine. Don't worry. You'll be able to bundle your streaming services with their streaming service. It's not the fact that they basically bought Fox, and so they got a large share of Hulu.
Yep.
Then they bought out Comcast. So now they control Hulu. Then you see what happened with Spider-Man. Again, another issue where they were asking for more control, more money. It's an interesting time for us as moviegoers, people that want something different, that want something more. But then you got to look at it. Well, what is helping Disney so much?
Then when you look at some of the other franchises, as an example, the Fast and the Furious one, you look at some of their most recent releases. Furious 7 did 1.5 million worldwide. The Fate of the Furious did 1.2 million worldwide. Then we get to Hobbs and Shaw, 694 million worldwide.
With two of the biggest actors in Hollywood, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Statham. And Idris Elba, so really 3 huge actors in this movie with the Fast and Furious franchise behind it, half of what the previous movies made.
Then when you look at the Godzilla Monsterverse, Godzilla in 2014, worldwide 529 million. Kong Skull Island saw a slight increase, 566 million worldwide. And then Godzilla King of the Monsters, $385 million worldwide. So a big drop off from the previous film.
When you look at these numbers, huge franchises, different studios struggle. Some underperformed, some lost money. But what does this mean when it seems like only franchises under the Disney umbrella are actually breaking records? What does that mean?
They're soulless recreations, bland corporate storytelling, and cynical risk-averse cash grabs. Well, yeah, we should all know the deal by now.
As the casual moviegoer, when does it start becoming the casual moviegoer's responsibility for this? Some people can say Disney's controlling narratives. They're the ones that are influencing people. You can go full they live on this whole thing if you want to. But at the same time, it's the casual moviegoer. It's the person that just takes his family to the theater to see Lion King because they saw Lion King when they were young. And then, of course, Marvel has its own franchise. Then you look at Star Wars. It's all pieces that they have accumulated, which is a lot of people's nostalgia. As we talked about before, is nostalgia trumping common sense?
Netflix will keep Friends through next year in $100 million.
They're paying $100 million, right? For 1 year of Friends, and then The Office too.
You know what that is, though? That's like nostalgia.
Nostalgia, right?
Yeah.
So all viewing right now is nostalgia.
Everything is based in an algorithm. And has Disney just perfected what people want to see? Do they know now more than ever exactly what people want to see and that they're going to go see it just because of either nostalgia or brand recognition? Why is it Disney movies the only ones that succeed?
Yep, we are to the point where it is now the responsibility of the movie viewer to make the decision on which movies you actually want to invest your time and money in. And right now, I guess it's showing that Disney, that's what people want to see. As Matt said, have they figured out the formula to the success of, hey, we can pump out these movies, spend X amount of dollars, but make it back plus some because it's nostalgia. Nostalgia is hitting hard right now. They also built up their Marvel universe. They're jumping back onto the Star Wars train to continue to push their type of films. And they are very, let's say it, generic.
The past 10 years, all the properties Disney has acquired, has this all been building up to this point so that they control the box office, that they control the narrative, is what we're going to see in the future now with Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal Studios, Sony. Are all those companies now going to try to emulate movies that Marvel does, or are they going to try to set themselves apart? It's going to be an interesting time, and the casual moviegoer is going to be the one that dictates that. DC is trying right now with the Joker. We see that's going to be a little bit different, and we'll see what happens with Spider-Man in the Sonyverse. But at this point, Disney has a stranglehold on the narrative, has a stranglehold on more than just the movie box office, but the world of cinema. And that's something that we have to change. And hopefully, a whole new world. In case I don't see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.